an aside, I'll tell you, it's not my remarks here, but the left has systematically invested for the last 20 years in winning elections, okay? So in 2000, we had a very narrow election in Bush v. Gore, and the Democrats were the ones going to court to overturn the results of an election, remember that? Hanging chads, et cetera, and they lost and they were bitter about it, okay? They were bitter, they were plotting their big comeback in 2004, okay? They thought they had a pretty weak president. Well, 9/11 happened, and this country came together like no other time in American history. So in 2004, the Democrats got their hats handed to them yet again. It was a humiliating defeat across the board. America first, and people rallied around our president. And so then George Soros decided to call a meeting of all the rich Democrats in the country. Yeah, you can move.
Boo, George Soros.
Well, George Soros imposed discipline on the Democrats, and today, from being a ragtag band of random lefties, crazy people, they have systematically invested. They have their own banks. They have their own investment funds. They have their own policing of their consultants. On our side, we pay consultants. Sorry if I'm offending any consultants in the room. Please cover your ears. It's okay. On our side, consultants lose and lose and lose, and they'll take money to run any race, and there's no consequences. They keep getting work, they follow up. On the Democrat side, they kind of agree to pay them a certain amount, and that's it. And the money gets reinvested. They actually give money to their own banks and they reinvest. And so that discipline has given the left a huge advantage over us. Today, we are at a significant disadvantage in the Republican Party, and I hope people are beginning to wake up. But it's not all bad news. I mean, far too often as conservatives, we write off the magnitude of our own personal impact on the story of America and the impact of America on the story of the world. This country, for all of how it's, seems to be going through troubled times. I'm an immigrant like many people in this room. And my husband's an immigrant. He came here from India. And in the 1970s, when my parents brought me, in the 1950s, when my husband came to this country as a young student, America was the shining star and beacon of liberty in the rest of the world. And believe it or not, it is today, as much as we see it tarnished and on hard times sometimes. And so when America fails America is also letting down the whole world. Okay? That's what I see as an American citizen, that when we fail, we are robbing hope from the rest of the world. So that's what's at stake when we fail as a country. So sometimes it's easy to feel like, why should I get involved in politics? I mean, everyone here in this room is obviously involved on Thursday night. You're here. But some of our neighbors, I know all of us knock on doors and walk precincts and make those phone calls, and you get those rude hang-ups, and you get that door slammed in your face. It can be discouraging. I know no one here in this room is discouraged, but some of our neighbors are discouraged, some of our friends are discouraged. Some of us say maybe we shouldn't get involved in the Central Committee or the State Party. Why should we go to that May conference in Burlingame and vote for Harmeet Dhillon for National Committee Women? It's easy to forget how important what we do as conservatives and as Americans is. Between work, family, hobbies, church, and all of the other productive things that we can do with our time, we rarely stop and take the time to reflect on the impact of our actions on our communities and on our world. Now, one of the favorite quotes I have from our founding fathers is by Thomas Jefferson. And Thomas Jefferson said, "One man with courage is a majority." That's seven
good one.
Profound words in a sentence. It speaks volumes about the American spirit and about American greatness. When Benjamin Franklin came out of Independence Hall after the Constitutional Convention and was asked, "What have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" How did he respond? Does anyone know? I know Professor McClintock knows, not you.
Republic if you can keep it.
Exactly. A republic if you can keep it.
How'd you know that?
And I looked at what's happening in DC today. I got up at 6 a.m. this morning. I was on Megyn Kelly's show, and she wanted to talk about that Supreme Court hearing. What was happening in DC today, this morning, for a 3-hour hearing in the United States Supreme Court was incredibly monumental. I think the future of our country could really pivot on how the Supreme Court rules.
I agree.
Is a president, a sitting president of the United States, entitled to act freely in his presidential duties without fear of future prosecution by his enemies? That's the simple question. And for 250 years, nobody really had to ask this question, because for 250 years in this country's history, nobody tried to prosecute their political enemy, former president. We didn't do it to Barack Obama, we didn't do it to Bill Clinton, we didn't do it, even Nixon wasn't witch hunted and prosecuted by his successors. And today, this is what this country has come to. And so, I was proud to get up and talk, and just so that you can have some good news out of some of the straight talk I'm going to give you. I feel confident after listening to that hearing. One of the cases that I'm actually representing President Trump on right now was repeatedly mentioned during this hearing, the Blasingame case, which involves civil lawsuits against him for what happened on the January 6th. I feel confident that we have 5, maybe 6 votes for the president's position, which isn't, I get to do whatever I want, but that his official acts while in office as president, broadly construed, not as private acts as candidate Trump, but his official acts, are entitled to immunity, or at least an analysis by the lower courts of what was official and what wasn't. So there is some good news out there. But they're ultimately Americans, and I'm including pundits, highly educated Ivy League people who don't seem to know anything about the Constitution. Have you noticed that?
Yes,
the Constitution spells this out. The Constitution spells out all of these things. Supreme Court precedent spells out all of these things. Thomas Jefferson is credited with saying, an educated citizenry is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people. But so many of our most influential people seem to be uneducated on the Constitution, and this is a real problem. And that's the people with gray hair. Talk about the young people today who went to Zoom school for years, who are suffering anxiety disorders, who having to go to work once in a while, show up at their offices. By the way, not just liberals. I hire mainly conservatives in my law firm, don't tell the labor department, but some of them are suffering from some of these issues as well. Okay, they're a little bit maladjusted sometimes. And so the people in this room are not the problem. You're the educated, informed, and activist citizenry that Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin envisioned. Our heavy lift as Republican activists is to make sure that we don't let our neighbors give up hope. We cannot. Because what I'm telling you is, if we don't get out there and have a strong showing in this election, Congressman McClintock told you what could happen in this country. I jokingly said at a speech I gave recently, if we don't win this election, I'll be here shopping for bunkmates and gulag, because I'm one of those lawyers who's out there representing President Trump and at least a dozen. And my law firm had over 100 cases to try to keep him off the ballot. 100 cases. At the same time, liberals funded by George Soros and his crazy band of leftists funded 100 cases against the former president. Excuse me. Someone can give me a bottle of water, something that would be great. So that's what's at stake. I read a piece in Federalist recently by John Daniel Davidson entitled "America's Stunning Embrace of Paganism Signals the End of this Country as We Know It." I know it sounds a little hyperbolic, but bear with me for a moment, okay? He starts the piece by establishing an observation. It's hard to survey the state of our country and not conclude that something is very wrong in America. Not just economically, not just at the border. There seems to be a spiritual rot going on in this country right now. We have lost our grip on reality, okay? And Davidson goes out to lay out his case that the cultural and political elites have entirely abandoned reason and common sense. Men can become women with a note from a doctor and some surgery. Women, speaking of women, sorry, you're not women, you're birthing people. Now the next one is evil. Children are being encouraged to consent to gender-affirming care without the consent of their parents. In fact, it was hidden from their parents that they were socialized and pressured to identify as bisexual, as transgender, to wear binders in school and take them off before they go home so mom doesn't know what's going on. You think I'm making this up? This is the case of Jessica Conan in Monterey County, California, in Freckles Union School District. Her 13-year-old daughter, Amanda, was secretly groomed by two teachers during the noon Gay-Straight Alliance Club. Why noon? So that the mom didn't have to give consent for her to stay after school. That's why noon. So mom only found out that her daughter showed up one day and said, "I'm now a different name, call me by a different name." The school teachers told her that in the school, the mom. Girl, and this was a girly girl, I see the photographs. Suddenly she starts wearing lumberjack shirts, shaves off half of her hair, calls herself a male name. Well, this wasn't Amanda in rural Monterey County, like organically deciding that this was how she wanted to be. This was her teachers telling her this was how she needed to be, because she was different. She was quiet, she wasn't like the other girls, so they thought this was a good target. Well, pretty soon, Amanda, going from lesbian to bisexual, became trans Amanda, identified as such, okay? Thank God for COVID. COVID actually saved this girl's life, because she had to stay home. And from staying home, the mom reestablished that rapport and figured out what was going on. And one brave whistleblower went to a California Teachers Association meeting and did a video of the training session that showed those two teachers teaching other members of the California Teachers Association how to run a Gay-Straight Alliance Club in a rural community. That was literally the topic of the seminar at the California Teachers Association. Okay.
I believe it. That's not a lie.
In a rural community, so in other words, knowing that, oh, these are people's values, let's figure out a way to corrupt those values. They know they can do it in San Francisco, no problemo in San Francisco, but I mean your communities here. Parents are effectively forced into the jackboot of the state to affirm their child's groomed delusions or lose custody of their children. I can't tell you, after I took up Jessica's case, the number of parents who called me in a panic saying, "Harmeet, you do family law, because my wife is trying to get back at me because I wasn't a great husband, according to her, by making our kid trans and taking away from me the right to have him stay alive." This is not an isolated incident. It's happening in every county. I can guarantee you it's happening in this county right now. Some crazy mom taking it out on her dad, on the dad. It's always the moms, by the way, doing crazy stuff. I've yet to hear a case of a dad grooming their child to be trans. It's not happening. Okay, so take that data point for your consideration. I still thought Jessica's case was unique until I started having the phones ring at my law firm. Every office at my law firm around the country began getting phone calls from grandparents and parents, and what their stories were heartbreaking. Our daughter is trans. Our son is trans. We tried to help them. They're living on the street. They don't talk to me anymore. They're taking drugs. How do I get my daughter in this contact? This is not organic. This is engineered by the teachers and the adults in these communities throughout the United States. So this is a little bit of a digression here, but it is evil. There's no other word for it. It is evil what adults are doing to children in this country.
That's it.
And it is, we are the last bastion of reason in this country, okay? If we start saying, shrug, okay, let's call that dude, and, her, let's let it go. Look, I'm gonna support my kid. Everyone's doing it in school. No, you are betraying the next generation if you do that. Anyway, I digress. This writer talked about how abortion, something that even the most extreme progressive leftists Remember what Hillary Clinton used to talk about abortion when she was running for office? She would say it should be safe, rare, and legal. Safe, legal, and rare. Remember that? They don't say the rare part anymore, right? In Europe, which I think is pretty degenerate itself, they don't allow abortions after the 12th week or the 15th week at the most. Okay, they're like, that's it. In this country, we have politicians literally arguing that it should be allowed until after birth. That is evil. That is degenerate. And it didn't happen overnight. First, you have Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood, which, by the way, is also heavily participating in the transgendering of our children by offering them shots and hormones without the parents' consent. That's what Planned Parenthood does. It isn't just, birth control and breast checkups. Okay, they are a cabinet evil. His hypothesis, this writer, answers the question. He says, put bluntly, America is becoming pagan. That doesn't mean worshiping Zeus or Apollo. It means an embrace of a fundamentally pagan worldview that rejects both transcendent moral truth and objective reality. And it insists that truth is relative. And it will be whatever we want it to be. That is the unifying theme of what's going on with the left in this country. And the right doesn't seem to be fighting back strongly enough, in my opinion. Even in California, political parties sometimes, the GOP, I feel like we want to go along and get along. Sometimes we want to be Democrat light. That's easier. We can get elected easier that way. I say no. I don't think so. I'm not here for that.
Yeah, right.
And a Christian pastor once explained his view of how we got here. Sin once tolerated seeks to be accepted. Sin once accepted seeks to be celebrated. And that's the situation here in California. And as in California, I like to call it the utopian petri dish of the United States. Every crazy idea gets germinated here, and then like a virus, it spreads all over the country. Secularism, also known as moral relativism, to put it in the current context, once tolerated seeks to be accepted. Secularism, once accepted, seeks to be celebrated. It began with us being told we had to tolerate LG, then LGB, then LGBTQ, and now it's LGBTQIAAXYZ, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
That's cute. I like that.
Now we're forced to celebrate and fund an entire brand of mental illness known as gender dysphoria, as if it's perfectly healthy. And God help you if you don't or you won't. According to the modern-day Marxists in the Democratic Party, silence is violence. Speech they disagree with is deemed hate speech. If you don't support the sexualization of children at drag shows, by the way, who should say children at drag shows? What is that?
Thank you.
That's crazy. Someone should be calling child protective services on those parents, not the ones who don't want to mutilate their children. If you think we should follow Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream for society and judge people by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin, you're the racist and you're the white supremacist. To put it plainly, Democrats have weaponized moral relativism to further their political extremism, and they're leveraging every medium of culture to propagandize and indoctrinate hundreds of millions of Americans. One of my friends had children later in age, and he's like carefully watching what his young children are watching. And he said, suddenly one of my girls, who's literally I'm talking about some school age, comes in and starts singing, "I like big butts." And so I was like, what is this kid looking at? This kind of degeneracy is in the cartoons these days. These kids do for 5-year-olds. Can you believe that? So luckily, not all bad news. There are great new conservative institutions like the Daily Wire and others that are creating conservative programming in this country. So if you have kids, look out for those new conservative media outlets that are actually producing good conservative content. Okay, it's not. Weaponization has put every American through utter hell in the last few years. Those of us living in California have had it exponentially worse than the rest of the country. We've lived through the tyranny and maoism of Gavin Newsom, who dines at French Laundry while he shuts down your local business. Remember that? I won't forget it.
Huckleberries.
Yeah.
My husband and I went to Wyoming the other day, and a friend took us to Buc-ee's, where the gas was like $3.50 a gallon, the most expensive pump. Double the price of what we pay in the Bay Area. Under Gavin Newsom, we had to battle pornography in our school curricula. Reparations being calculated and getting ready to be paid with your tax dollars. Rolling brownouts. I see one of my neighbors from the Sea Ranches the other day. You go to the Sea Ranch on the Sonoma coast, you don't know if the electricity is going to be on that day or not. Any given day, I'm telling you, it is absolutely random as to whether you can count in your multi-million-dollar house on the coast, whether you're going to have electricity. That's what it's come to in California. Water being rationed if you're a farmer in this state. I talked about that with Jean Duarte. Homeless encampments, not just in San Francisco and Los Angeles, but in Crescent City, in Hampshire, and your cities here in the Central Valley. It's endemic, and we've just been habitualized to accepting it. The decriminalization of criminal activity, which has affected, to the point where retailers are pulling out of California legally as a result of this. Again, I feel kind of a little bit of what they call schadenfreude, like, it isn't, when things are bad, like you look over there and it's bad there too, like it used to be just bad in San Francisco, now it's bad everywhere in California, thanks to Prop 47 and other things like that. Tyrannical COVID mandates, lockdowns, and the trampling of our right to worship. Taxpayer-funded health care for illegal aliens. The criminalization of doctors providing you the medical advice they think is best for you and your family here in this state. Rigged election recalls where Democrats get to spend whatever they want while the challengers have campaign finance limits. Remember that? And what amounts to government-mandated secrecy from parents for gender-mutilating surgeries and sterilizing drug treatments for their children. Okay. Well, if Chloe Cole, my client, and Layla Jane, my client, who are both detransitioners from Central Valley of California, if they can stand up to demand to the machine, so can every person in this room. Okay? You think the Democrats would run out of bad ideas and new ways to destroy one of the most beautiful places on God's given earth? But they haven't. They essentially bankrupted the state. Now, Gavin Newsom will tell you we're merely in a $37 billion deficit. It's more like $73 billion. That stupid train. Democrats.
The nowhere president.
When Gavin Newsom came into office. Like, I'm going to tell you, in his heart of hearts, I think Gavin Newsom knows it's a stupid idea too. But to get elected and to get the endorsements of the Democrat unions in the state, he had to enthusiastically champion it. And here we are today. No train. I'm going to bet that in my lifetime there ain't going to be no train.
There's one in Florida.
Yeah. Well, about that little shared misery. These failures are no longer isolated to the Marxist strongholds of the California coast. In fact, California is beginning to look a lot like America under Joe Biden's leadership. The national debt has soared to $34 trillion and counting every few minutes. If you run into Congressman Massey, you'll see a little clock for that. The Uniparty just gave another $60 billion of your money to the Ukraine, waving Ukraine flags in the United States Congress. That was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, is the waving of a foreign country's flag while paying for the defense of the foreign country's border.
Paying with
while
our US
own
dollars.
border remains wide open. Have you
Spending
all seen
US
this?
dollars.
I heard something from San Diego here. Maybe seeing these boats pull up onto the beaches of San Diego and having cars waiting for them, maybe that'll make some people wake up. So far, I don't see any shock in Sacramento, unfortunately. Since Joe Biden took office, those people on the beach in San Diego have joined more than 10 million people who crossed our border illegally, which is more than the population of most American states. That's the effect of this craziness. In fact, it's more than the population of 40 individual states. It's 30% greater than the populations of Santa Clara, San Mateo, San Francisco, Alameda, Contra Costa, Solano, Marin, Napa, and Stanislaus County combined. Joe Biden and the Uniparty have no desire to put America first. They'll sell us out for their own personal gain, and that's what they're dealing with, and that's what's at stake in this election. So, I'm proud to represent President Trump. Not everybody's cup of tea. You could say, you say Orange Man bad, I wish you didn't have to have NDAs, but at the end of the day, I hope every single person in this room does everything they can and leaves it all on the table to make sure that we elect him again, as 47. It seems challenging here in California and even nationally, I can tell you. The left seems to control the media, the education system, the bureaucracy, the intel community, even the system of justice. One of the things I commented about earlier today, I'm a media surrogate for the legal case against President Trump, and there's a trial going on. Instead of attending this important hearing in the United States Supreme Court about his own liberty, he's forced to sit in a courtroom in New York with a judge who's presiding over a case supposedly about a campaign finance violation, but won't allow a campaign finance legal expert to testify on behalf of the president. Won't allow Orthodox Jews, demographically the most conservative voting bloc in New York, to be on the jury. What do you mean you won't allow them, Harmeet? Well, by holding court on Fridays, where most trial court, every lawyer in the room is nodding here, every court is usually dark on Fridays, so the judge can handle other business on Fridays. He's holding court Monday, Tuesday, dark on Wednesday, which is the holy day of no religion, and then holding court on Thursdays and Fridays. That automatically eliminated every Orthodox Jew from the jury pool. But it gets worse. I could go on and on about that case. And eventually, what we pray for in that case is a hung jury. That's the best you can do there.
Yay. I agree.
And the retrial will be too late. But that's what's happening in this country right now. And some people feel like maybe it's all bad news. Why should I bother? But while some see the political darkness as a reason to give up, they're always the firefighters, right? Who run towards the fire. And I feel like everyone in this room is one of those firefighters. Are we firefighters? I see hope. Every day when we start, my husband and I pray together at home. We thank God first for bringing us here to this country. It's the most free and beautiful place on God's earth.
Yeah.
We thank God for giving us resources, and giving us education, and giving us each other to reinforce ourselves as we face these challenges that face our country every day. And so there is so much to be thankful for. The Creator that guided the hands of our founding fathers is the same Creator who presides over us today, who put us in this place, who brought us together with the fellowship of other Americans like each other, who think alike, who agree, and who have equipped each person in this room with the exact skills necessary to claim victory in this battle for the soul of our nation. So these are all reasons for hope. So we need to know that our efforts are not in vain. In the last 7 years, since that wonderful election, I remember election night in 2016, I think John was there too, we had a couple of members of our county central committee who worked at Twitter. It was called Twitter at the time. And I first went to a party that I was invited to by one of my clients who was a big venture capital billionaire donor. And he invited me to the party at the Battery. In San Francisco knows the Battery is where the tech bros hang out. And so I did this thing at the Battery, and it was on the rooftop, and Mayor Ed Lee was still around. Then he came to this party, John nodding, all the glitterati there, the Yetis and these people and that people. And they were sipping their, artisan cocktails and bougie cocktails. And they were watching the news, and it got quiet. It got quiet all of a sudden. And I looked up at the screen, I was like, I gotta be with my people. So I got out of there, and I went over to the San Francisco GOP party on Twitter. And that was one of the greatest nights believe me, it's been lonely in San Francisco. So San Francisco Republicans were cheering that night like Republicans all over the country, and our country had a vote. And a leader like President Trump, who doesn't give a damn what is said about him and keeps fighting, is a rare thing in politics. So the last 7 years, he's brought a lot of new energy into our party. If we can keep it.
If we can keep it. Amen.
In the past 7 years, patriots have started a great reawakening in this country, okay? It is within our grasp to turn this thing around. I really believe that, or I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be spending my time and treasure writing checks, making phone calls, donating, being a member of the RNC, which, believe me, has been particularly awkward this last year, if I did not believe that. From the walkaway movement to Brexit, millions of Americans have taken the red pill thanks to determined patriots like those in this room. Even here in California, our state party has managed to hit the ground and managed to get a lot of Republicans elected thanks to adopting the methods of the left, ballot harvesting, ballot curing, determinedly using technology to contact our neighbors. So these are signs of hope, okay? We are seeing victories for freedom all across America, and our momentum is building. The challenge that lies before us remains great. The evil we face is great. Our opponent's commitment and its funding is unwavering. But as I look towards November and the journey it will take to get us there, I think about the monumental challenges that have faced mankind in history. There's a sentiment penned by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. God will judge us. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Friends, all of us here in this room were made for a time such as this. We were made to play a role in the story of America, which remains to be unwritten. We were made to speak and to act. God will not judge us guiltless if we fail to recognize the calling of time and circumstance of this country. We will not be held guiltless if we fail to leave our children a better America than the ones that our parents left for us, or in my case, brought us to. I ask you, does everyone in this room know it's evil to mutilate the genitals and chemically sterilize an entire generation of young Americans? We all know that's evil, right? Do we know it's evil to sexualize, groom, and destroy the innocence of children? We know that. Do we know it's evil to cheer and celebrate the murder of children in the womb up until the moment of birth and beyond? We know that's evil, don't we? Is it evil to encourage and facilitate the literal invasion of our country by people who ignore our laws from day one? We know that's wrong, right?
Absolutely.
Do we know it's evil for the government to steal our money, destroy our economy, close our businesses, undermine our wages, and rack up more than $34 trillion in debt?
Yes.
That generations that we can't even comprehend are going to have to pay. We know that's wrong, right?
Yes.
So friends, I'm asking you to resolve to do whatever it takes between now and Election Day in November to leave every ounce of will on the battlefield, whether it's by knocking doors, making phone calls, filling out those forms on the table and writing some checks, putting up signs, sending text messages, getting 10 of your neighbors to vote. Especially those neighbors who say, what good does it do? I don't care, I don't like X, Y, or Z politician. No. The stakes are much bigger than your likes and your dislikes, okay? And maybe things are taken care of in your local community because you live in a conservative community. That's not the end of the question. Maybe you have the ability because you're retired or your spouse works or you have freedom in your job to relocate for a week or two to a battleground state like Arizona, like Georgia. Help chase ballots.
We're a battleground state.
Battleground state. All right. San Diego.
California.
We're a battleground state in places. Yes, we are. I left San Francisco to help John Duarte get elected. You never moved to San No matter what your capacity, let's meet here tonight knowing that the flame of liberty will not be snuffed out on our watch. All right? Let us resolve that we are the generations that will restore America to the shining city on the hill. It's going to take all of us working together to do that and setting aside our differences and our little niggles with the state party or our local leadership and getting it done. It will take all of us, it will take all of you. God bless all of you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.